Hey there, are you grieving the potential loss of a loved one or feeling overwhelmed with the loss of someone you care about? If so, you're in the right place. Lisa Hartung here, and this podcast is designed to guide you through topics surrounding death and dying. We'll dive into multifaceted aspects of grief, offering you a blend of personal stories, expert insights, and practical advice for your grief journey. May this be a safe space for you to learn, listen, and ask questions about your own life and loved ones. So grab your favorite beverage and let's dive in.
Well, welcome to the podcast, everyone. I am so thrilled to have Dr. Camelia Clarke on the show today. She's a nationally recognized death care expert in the funeral profession with nearly 30 years of experience helping families navigate loss. She's a president of Paradise Memorial Funerary Corp in Milwaukee and the recipient of the American Funeral Director of the Year Award. She's a big deal. A trusted spokesperson for the National Funeral Directors Association, Dr. Clarke is frequently called upon by media outlets across the US and abroad to share her perspective on on how communities grieve. And so I'm so grateful for her time and for joining us on the show. I think she has a very unique perspective on the death and dying process and what happens after. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Clarke.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Oh my goodness. So you have been in the industry for over 30 years, and I would love, Dr. Clarke, if you could just take us back and tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry. You know, we were saying how death and dying isn't really a sexy topic, and so it's one that's so heartfelt, and I'm always so grateful for people who work in this space.
Yes.
So please share your story. It's one that's so inspiring, and you've been a first in so many different platforms, and you're such a go-getter. So I would love our listeners to hear about that too.
Well, thank you so much. Every time I think about my journey into the death care profession, it always takes me back to this starry-eyed ninth grader that was 14 years old and having no idea what it was that I wanted to do. And so I happened to be so fortunate that I was attending a career fair, and by chance, I came into interaction with a funeral director. He was a gentleman. It was a 5 minute interaction, but that 5 minute interaction changed the trajectory of my life. We
Mm,
had a very brief conversation, and I was so intrigued by what he did that I said, this is something that I want to do. And although I explored different professions, different career fairs, and different careers in high school, everything just did full circle to coming back to the funeral profession. And so I started at the age of 18 on the educational journey and then doing my apprenticeship. And I always say that this is the type of profession that you just can't wake up one day and say, this is what I want to do. It
mhm,
doesn't work like that because there are so many different layers because you're constantly giving yourself every day, every family that you meet, a piece of you goes with that family, and you become a part of their life and their life story because you develop such intimate moments with them at such a short period of time.
mhm,
And I'm just so happy to be able to embark on 30 years in this profession, to have served thousands of families. And I can honestly say there is not a family that I personally sat down and did consultations with that I don't have a memorable moment with them. So I'm so thankful to be on this journey. And of course, with 30 years of being in a profession, you are going to experience dealing with grief. And so I have, and that's why it's become very passionate with me to have these conversations because everybody at some point of time is going to experience some form of grief. And how we do it is going to impact whether or not we have a healthy healing journey or non-healthy healing journey.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that right there is the healthy healing journey is why we're here, right? To
Yes.
help people through that really difficult time that sometimes we might not know the tools on how to grieve. And so that career fair and that one 5-minute conversation
Uh-huh.
turned into 30 years. And I think that's just a true testament of you never know who you're going to meet and what conversation will turn into what. So how
Yes.
how so fascinating, Dr. Clark. And so you also spoke, I think, when you work in this space, people
Mm-hmm.
just assume that you are, you see it every day, the
Mm-hmm.
grief, and that you're almost immune to it. But as you said, you yourself can experience immense grief, even though you're around it all the time,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it hits close to home. And I'm so sorry for your loss, but you lost your nephew
Yes.
quite suddenly, and that kind of shaped your views on how people in today's day and age
Mm-hmm.
really not promote, but let people know. And so I would love for you to kind of share with us about how to respectfully communicate loss, both from a family perspective and then, from a bystander perspective. Or,
Yes. So my nephew died of suicide, 19 years old, 2015. Very unexpected. We didn't see any of those signs. And he was just an amazing kid, really a genius. He was recruited by the Navy to serve in the nuclear engineering program.
oh,
The absolute, so 1% of 1% get invited to that particular program. And so it was such an honor, and he was so excited. And we get the phone call at 10 o'clock that he died. We didn't have any of the details. We did have an increment that it may have been suicide, but we were shocked and we're like, how? Going through the details. And that was traumatic to us as well with the mode, how it happened. And so we were in Wisconsin and he was in Ohio. 10 o'clock, we got that notification, and by 10:15, it was circulating on social media
oh,
with RIPs, people asking questions about the mold and how it happened. It just, yeah, reaching out to my sister. I think that was equally as traumatic as the actual notification because we were trying to figure out, okay, one, Ohio is 6 or 7 hours away. You get a call in 15 minutes, you're just getting in your car and you're just driving, not knowing, not having any information. And so what we kind of had to do was to put the grief on pause, go into crisis mode to manage the online platform and the individuals that posted the information. And a lot of times sometimes people will post things because they're grieving too. But then there is norms to doing that because what you don't want to do, you don't want to cause additional grief, complicated grief on the family at that moment because the family do have to go through the stages of grief. And at that moment, we were clearly in shock and denial. So we just really had to go into crisis mode again, and we designated a family spokesperson and requested respectfully that everyone take everything down off of social media. Now that didn't happen. That was my experience. But throughout the years, I had heard numerous of families talk about the same scenario. So I just really felt like with my research, doing the research, okay, what are the norms? What should we be doing? And there was not a lot of defined norms on social media etiquette and grief. And so I just knew that I had to step up and to use my platform to talk about this. And so, some of the things that I would say when it comes to social media and grief, a lot of times, many people are unsure of what to say when someone is grieving,
Yeah,
right?
so
And
many
so,
times.
so many times. And so you have this platform, and so now you just go and post. So the post is not usually bad, it's the timing of the post.
Mm.
You
Hmm.
should be taking your cue from the family member, the next of kin. And there's hierarchies, there's levels to the next of kin. You have the spouse, then you have the children, then you may have the parents, then you may have the sisters and brothers, then you may have cousins and best friends, and then you may have long-term friends. You may have work colleagues. So you look at all these different tiers. And so the safest rule of thumb is to wait until the highest tier of the next of kin puts that announcement out.
Yeah.
And believe that when they put that announcement out, it takes so much courage and it takes almost everything in them to put that announcement out. And it's quite often that you hear when you see that post, it's taken me I've had to muster up the strength and the courage to even post this. And so I think just taking that lead from that initial family member, give them that moment to let them share the details when they're ready. They will. They absolutely will because they know that they're not the only one that's grieving. They know that you are too. But your daily life did not change like their daily life has changed.
Mm.
So I always say, give a little grace with that before you post.
Yeah, I think that's such a good rule of thumb.
Hmm.
And I do it from personal experience when other people posted before the family.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, it hurts. And so I love the the takeaway of, okay, let's wait to see the first next of kin. And yes, there are so many different hierarchies and what people will say. And do you find that there is one platform? I guess it depends on the age bracket that the person was in terms of what platform is used, because it seems there's so many, right?
It is. I think with Facebook, I think the Facebook is probably the one that you see a lot of more official announcements on there.
Yeah.
And then with the other platforms, you see a lot of the sharing of
Mhm.
the announcements. And
That,
so, you'll go on TikTok, you'll go on Instagram, you'll go on X, formerly known as Twitter, and
mhm.
you'll usually see these shares. But I think by far most you'll see more, in my experience, you see
Mhm.
more full announcements on those particular platforms.
Yeah.
One, because the characters are not limited, like some
Yeah.
of the other platforms.
You can really say a lot about the
You can
about a
say
lot of work.
absolutely a lot.
Yeah. And I think, or at least what I hear a lot from others about is they really don't know what to say. So, say the loved one posts, "Hey, so sorry, so and so passed away this morning." Um, what, from your experience being in this space for a long time, what are some constructive ways that people can support with their words, um, or not words? What are the best ways to support the bereaved?
I think the best way to support them is to acknowledge that the death has happened. I'm sorry for your loss of your husband. I am sorry. If someone lost a baby or stillborn, I'm sorry for your loss, the life that's not here. That's constructive.
Yeah.
And be okay. Sometimes it is so challenging for us to have that space, that quiet space, because a lot of people was used to that space being filled with words. And a lot of times, from my experience, the family is just the bereaved is saying, thank you for acknowledging that. And it's okay to go to someone's house and you just sit there.
Yeah.
You just absolutely sit there in that space, in that moment with them, because there's absolutely nothing that you can say to that person that's going to bring their loved ones back or change the outcome. And they're coming to realization with that, and they are trying to develop some form of acceptance. That's the first part. The second part is while they're working on developing that acceptance, they also have to take care of the business of death. So not only do you have to accept it, now I have to make over 101 decisions in a fairly short period of time. And I have to probably coordinate one of the largest events that I probably coordinated in my life and this person's life, to where I'm inviting the entire community and everyone that knew my loved one. And so just being there in that moment, in that space, and being very, very careful with the words that you use.
Mm.
If a mom, there's many times that young moms and parents have come into our office and they're just crying. And they're crying, one, because they lost a child, maybe through stillborn, maybe through SIDS, but very unexpected, or the pregnancy didn't advance enough. And someone comes up to them and say, you can have another one. And their statement is, absolutely, I probably can have another one. But what if I can't because I lost this one? But I want this one. This is my daughter, and her life mattered. And so I think they just really want to understand that their life mattered. And so utilizing words and phrases and not being afraid of the quiet space and holding their hand if they want their hand held, but just sitting right next to them and saying, I'm sorry, I'm here for you, and being careful of the words you're saying because you don't want to complicate their grief.
Mm. Hmm. I'll sometimes hear too that silence is okay and just being a physical presence and
Hmm.
helping out wherever you can.
Hmm. Yes.
I think what you spoke about having, the emotional and spiritual grief, and then you have the tactical of, okay, now we have to have a service, or we need,
Mhm.
what do we do with the body? And how do we support them, the individual on this, in this next phase? And what does that look like? And do we have a party now? Do we celebrate
Mhm.
later? Is it a small group? Is it a large group? I think that's a big part of it too. I don't, every family is so different, but are there common threads that you have seen or themes of the funerary process that have evolved in your time as a funeral director?
So the question is, have there things in a funerary process that has evolved? Absolutely.
Mm.
People, from my experience, I see that people are looking for meaningful, unique, traditional, but non-traditional ways to memorialize their loved ones,
Mm.
and especially with the rise of cremation.
Hmm.
Okay, sometimes the family will say, well, we're going to do a direct cremation, but we're going to have this beautiful memorial service either before the cremation or after the cremation. And what we're seeing is a lot of families is incorporating digital platforms into the entire memorialization process. They're taking control over that process and saying, okay, let's bring live streaming in. If Auntie Susie can't make it for the funeral, especially during COVID, there was a lot of times people could not make it to be there to have that communal support. And I'll use myself, my personal family experience. My aunt was nearly, she's in great health, but she was nearly 80 years old in her late 70s, but she don't travel well. She just don't like to do the airplanes. So she's like, this is my sister. I love her. I'm in Arizona. I'm not going to drive 3 days, but I want to be a part of this service. And so what do we do? In the chapel, we live stream and we had her on the big screen. So everyone was there looking. at her. She had flowers. She was dressed up in her funeral attire.
Mm.
She was able to give remarks via the microphone. We held it up to the audio. She was there during the family luncheon repast. She was able to eat and share a meal as well. So she feels like, and she was very much a part of the conversations that were being had during the luncheon. So families are finding ways to bring that digital platform into their new way of grieving. And so bringing the social media etiquette and grief back,
Yeah.
all we need to do is make sure that we have norms established because this isn't a platform that's going to go away. We just
Mhm.
need to understand what are the right tools and how do we use it as a tool to make sure that we're not complicating someone's griefs. We're actually enhancing and helping them on a healthy grieving journey.
Yeah. I think that, what a wonderful opportunity for you to have family members be present and and really be a part of that. And I love how it wasn't just during the service, it was
Yeah.
also in the after time when she was able to share a meal with everyone. And being away and or far away from your family, maybe living alone or not being able to travel can be so isolating sometimes. And so
Yeah.
feeling like there is an opportunity to engage on a digital platform is so helpful. I often think about FaceTiming with my 96-year-old grandpa, and
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
he's got the phone up, and you can just see his nose or something. I'm not even sure.
Like I gotta see my granddaughter.
But I think it's so wonderful that you can have that. And so a question would be, do you live stream almost every service, or do you record it in case someone can't be there live? And then you have that platform. How I get, and maybe it changes with the individuals.
It does. It changes with the individual. Some families are very private. There's sometimes dynamics going on,
Mm.
depending on the mode of death, the type of death, to where a family will say, listen, we don't want this live stream. We want this to be very private. And maybe they'll hire someone to record it. There's a larger majority of the time, I would say between 80 to 90% of the time, the family wants it live streamed for those that can't make it physically. And
Mhm.
so we always, during our consultation, we have a consultation with each family about the digital, what are your digital preferences?
Yeah.
There isn't an arrangement that we make that doesn't go over those digital preferences because it's a part of the arrangement process. Do you want a digital memorial celebration? Do you want live streaming? How do you want your online guests to participate in the services? And so we offer that to the family and we encourage all of our other colleagues to make sure that when they're doing an arrangement to include the digital preferences in there.
Yeah. Because even being able to interact is, you feel like you're so much more a part of it when you're able to interact and,
Right.
write comments in. And I love that your aunt was able to make remarks and you could bring her in that way too. Um, that's really special. And
It
I'm
was amazing.
like just so it's such a raw experience. And so any way that you can offer support to the bereaved is just such a gift for
Right.
them. So thank you for the work that you do there. And thinking about, I'm, I've talked about this with other people, but I'm interested to hear your perspective or if there's I don't know if there's any suggestions or norms that are discussed in the funerary business, but when someone passes, they most likely have some sort of social platform that they have been entering information on. In your experience, is there any discussion about what happens with that platform that was originally the individual's?
Yes. A lot of the platforms do understand the memorialization. And
Mhm.
so if you go to Meta, their platforms, they do have an option there to where when you can do a memorialization. And actually, when you set up the new account there, that's a part of the setup process. And so we always encourage the family, if there's a device that you have that with your loved ones, usually all of our social media accounts are activated to our mobile phones. And a lot of times the family will have access to that device most of the time, 9 out of 10 times. And
Yeah.
so they're able to control the account from that device and then change whatever passwords or settings. But then memorialization, going on there, changing the settings. And there are several individuals that I know, close friends and family members, they have chosen to keep the page active. And so you will see a post come up saying my wife or something like that. And but it's that spouse that is posting a shared memory from that platform. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. A lot of times, if that page is shut down, then that family members, that next of kin lose those memories that
Mm,
are being shared daily and yearly on the anniversaries. The photos are there. If you go to some of your platforms, some people have 10, 15,000 pictures.
yeah.
And who wants to lose those, right?
Right.
I just think those platforms have been able to allow that family to keep that memory alive. And one of the things that I always share with platforms that I speak on, as simple as this may sound, it's a lot difficult. Say their name.
Mm,
If Miss Johnson lost her husband, James, it's okay to say his name. Sometimes we're so afraid of triggering an emotion or grief in a person that has lost someone. But really, what they want it to be acknowledged that their life mattered, that they lived.
yeah.
And having those memories on these social media platforms, that reinforces that.
I love that saying their name, continuing to tell stories. It keeps them alive.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just a wonderful way for people to share. It can be interesting when it's like, so and so's birthday is today. And like, happy heavenly birthday.
Right. And that's a part of their journey. And if
Mhm.
you talk about social media and grief, that is appropriate to go on that platform if they're sharing this memory. This 3 years was so long ago. This would have been our 29th anniversary.
Mm.
They are welcoming you to comment and acknowledge them on that particular post. Now, on the flip side, I would also say, again, take the family's leads in sharing memories
Mm.
because you don't want to be a trigger for certain memories. Again, it depends on what your line in succession in terms of your relationship to the being the next of kin.
Yes. But I'm interested, and sometimes maybe you've run into this where the immediate family shuts down
Yeah.
and doesn't talk about the person or maybe alludes to them, but the grief is almost so powerful that it's hard for them to say the name and share the stories. And so
Mhm.
they shut down. And it's that next layer of individuals that want to share about them on their own grief journey. So have you run into that at all of where maybe the parents themselves don't do anything, but the other siblings would or cousins?
Yeah, that's a great point you bring up with identifying that everybody have their own need to heal
Yeah.
and grieve in their own special way. So if you have a parent and then you have a child that want to express their selves via grief and have their grief journey via social media, there is ways that you can go on the platform, and if mom just cannot handle seeing those particular memories, then
Mm.
respect her wishes. There's ways that you can go on the platform and share something and make it to where this person is not able to see it out of respect and their wishes.
Mm,
Okay. And
yeah.
so just utilizing social media as a tool and understanding the different settings, but also having those conversations with that person if you're close enough to say,
Mm.
okay, this is my brother. We went skydiving and this is a memory that's helping me on a healthy grieving journey.
Yeah.
Right. And that may be a trigger to mom. Like, "Oh, that's a trigger to me. I thought he was, that wasn't a safe activity. I told him don't do that. I'm angry with that he did it." So I just think having that conversation to set those norms to say, Mom, I know some of these trigger you. So when I do share the memories, I'll make sure that you won't see them.
Mm.
And that's a great compromise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sure, Dr. Clark, that you are kind of the ombudsman for families at times as you're working with them on honoring their loved one, on maybe mom has an idea of what she wants, and then daughter has an idea of what she
Yeah.
wants. It comes back to what would daddy have wanted?
There you go. And sometimes you don't know that question because daddy will probably, play the fist with mom and daughter, the two leading ladies in his life. And so you just have to figure out how to coexist together. And
Mm.
whenever we have those consultations with the families, we're always talking about, okay, um, let's sit down and let's talk about how we can both have a healthy healing journey. And
Mm.
that's usually something people don't think about.
Yes.
What is it? What tools do you need so that you can survive, you can get through this, and you can maintain and you can honor your loved ones, the life that they live while still taking care of you?
Yeah. Is there kind of it's not prescribed, but is there a healthy healing journey that is available? Because again, sometimes it's this unknown path, and fear can really overcome in that situation,
Hmm.
right? Fear holds us back from doing so much. And then fear
Hmm.
and grief coupled together can be really scary. And so is there a healthy healing journey that you offer with families, or that you discuss the tools, so maybe that's part of it, but would love to hear from your
Yes.
perspective.
From my experience, the healthy healing journey starts with acknowledging grief is not pretty.
Yeah.
Grief is unexpected. Grief is emotional. Grief
Mm,
is physical.
yeah.
And a lot of people really, until that grief hits you, you don't really know that. A team member of ours lost his grandpa recently, actually in the last 2 weeks, and he was just sharing. He's a minister, and his grandpa is a minister was a minister as well. And he says, I'm arranging this. He was out of town. He says, I'm arranging the services. We're picking a casket, and I'm getting this together and that together. Because I asked, how are you doing? He said, oh, I'm fine. Grandpa lived a nice life, but I'm fine. I'm gonna get through this. This is gonna be okay. And he did very well at the cemetery. When they got ready to bury grandpa,
Mm,
he almost passed out. He clutched his heart, his chest, and he says, I think I don't know what's happening. I may be having, some type of attack. And took him to the doctor, and it was an anxiety attack. And the doctor
mm,
said, that is grief. That's the physical component of grief. And he didn't know that portion of it because this is the closest person he left. So I think understanding grief, I think talking about it and understanding the toll that it can take on you and be willing to feel. That's the hardest thing because we
Oh,
often want to
mm,
protect ourselves from the feelings. There is some times to where the emotions are going to come out, the tears are going to come out, and knowing that you're going to be angry,
yeah.
you're going to be in denial, you're not going to have acceptance. You are going to have acceptance. You're going to be angry. It's a cyclical cycle that does not go in order. And so I just think educating yourself before you experience grief,
Yeah.
right? Before you experience grief, so that you can have some level of awareness. To me, that helps a person get on the journey to healthy grief with knowing that, again, it's emotional, it's physical, and there's no right or wrong way to experience. And
Mhm.
it goes on forever.
I think that Dr. Clark is so important. It goes on forever. It takes as long as it takes.
Hmm.
And, that loved one was a part of your life. They mattered.
Hmm.
And their spark will always be there.
Hmm.
And it's knowing tools on how to
Hmm.
grieve in a healthy way.
Yeah.
That's why we call it giving grief grace. Like some days you are not going to want to get out of bed, and that's okay,
Yes.
right?
And
And just
incorporating social media into that.
hmm
Like having a social media plan, knowing that your grief is going to take place. And so when I say have a social media grief plan, understand your tolerance and understand, okay, how do I want to engage in social media?
hmm
So, like with my nephew, I will post around his birthday and one or two other times. There are other individuals that's posting monthly, weekly, daily, and that's okay. That is their social media grief plan. And
mm,
understanding how the memories are. And when we do our suicide prevention walk, that's one of the three posts
yeah,
because I want to use my social media grief plan to never to lose another life if we can spare it.
yes, yes. I've never thought of having a social media grief plan, but that's brilliant. I also find that sometimes when the anniversary of the passing comes up, it's really challenging for the family. And
Hmm.
so it's thinking of how can we light up. So part of the grief journey,
Yeah.
purpose helps us heal. And so having purpose of, I love how you said, yes, we have a suicide prevention walk.
Hmm.
And so that's such a service oriented outlet to
Yeah.
share his story, your nephew's story,
Hmm.
and also to say, all right, come with us, let's support one another on this journey so that we can save those lives.
Yes. And that's our plan. Our plan is awareness. And
Mhm.
so, but we know that.
Mhm.
Had you asked me 5 years ago,
Yeah.
I didn't know I had a social media grief plan. But I'm thankful to be able to talk about that today.
Yeah. And I also think it's okay to be vulnerable in the
Yes.
grief posts.
Hmm.
And um, they always say like misery loves company, but I think that when being vulnerable in a social media post, it just shows that you're human and other
Yeah.
people can connect with being human.
Hmm.
And if everything is all sunshine and butterflies, that's really hard to connect with because someone who is deep in grief is going to be, that's not me. I don't get that. So I think about as I have my own grief platform, I need to be more vulnerable in that because even after the fact, it doesn't matter how many years ago it's been, the tears and the sadness can still bubble up whenever, there are those triggers that you're at the grocery store and you see
Oh,
someone
yeah.
walking and you're like, that's grandma.
Yeah. Yeah. It has happened. And I think being vulnerable, again, knowing how vulnerable that you want to be on this platform and
Yes.
who you want to be vulnerable with. And
Mhm.
just defining key moments to say, okay, this is our anniversary. This is his birthday. This is Christmas. Christmas, we'd always kiss under the mistletoe or something like that. And like you said, being authentic to yourself,
Yeah.
but being vulnerable, opening up that portal, that platform so that you can continue to get the communal support. And that's been one of the benefits of social media and grief is that they always say after the funeral, people leave, people are done. right?
Hmm.
You're going to get them through the funeral, you're going to get them right before the death, and then maybe a week or so after the funeral. But now this widow is at home by herself. There's no more food, there's no more calls, the periodic calls, but not like she had the support in the beginning. So
Hmm.
social media has the ability to extend that communal support to them
Yeah.
so that you're now going on this journey with them, this grief journey with them.
And they're not alone. I think that's
They're not alone.
also, especially if you don't live near family
Hmm.
and maybe you now do live alone, is
Hmm.
that social media presence can help, that community can help support and uplift.
Yes, yes.
I've so enjoyed this conversation, Dr. Clark. Before we close, is there any simple practice or advice that you might give to listeners who are, who are wondering how to best show up for their community or a loved one in this who is experiencing loss?
I just would say understand and remember that social media has changed how we mourn.
Mm,
But don't forget that grief requires sensitivity, it requires empathy, and it requires privacy. And we're talking about the initial stages of grief, just familiarizing yourself with some form of grief etiquette. Online, we really talked about online, but offline as well. And allowing the family to lead and showing them respect, and but also, as we just talked about, offering authentic and ongoing support and understanding that they're going to need their support before, during, and after that loss, and having those conversations with them.
hmm. Yeah, that just being there, being present. And one more thing popped into my head as we were talking, and it's about the obituary.
Yes. Okay.
And how do people share the obituary? And do you ever work with someone who has a terminal illness or is in in their final stage to help write before they pass? Help write the
Yes.
obituary before they pass?
It's a lot of that's more common now to where individuals are saying, if I'm in this terminal stage, I want to write my own obituary. I, I'll never forget my grandpa, my great grandfather wrote his own obituary. I was probably 12 or 13 when he passed away. And I didn't, my level of respect came as I got older and understood the true gift that he did. And so
Mhm.
while we were going through my great grandma's obituary, his obituary said, according to my mother, this is the day I was born. And I just thought about that. And it just took me back to say, you really don't know when you're born. It is according to your mother and your father. Your mother certainly, and your father, but certainly your mother.
Yeah.
And so I have that memory even from 12 years old to now, with understanding just that power of gift that he gave. And so we do see a lot of individuals that saying, I'm going to write my own story because I can tell it how I want to tell it in my own words and from my lens. And when I tell you, those are some of the most incredible and engaging obituaries and authentic obituaries
Mm.
that I have ever read. And again, there's ample opportunities because once it go on the funeral home's website, most of the time it's going to automatically go to the online platform. And once that obituary is placed, feel free to share it because the family, this is their way of sharing their loved ones. This is their obituary. Please feel free to share it unless otherwise
Yeah.
directed not to.
Yeah, and I love also that it's become also a photo wall
Hmm.
or videos, and it's much more dynamic. And I love the idea of writing your own obituary and then updating it, just like a resume,
Yes, absolutely.
because you never know, right?
And it's a living memorial. It becomes a living document.
Yes.
And that memory is going to come up, that share is going to come up. And those shares also give the family, give the person that's supporting that family, you get a memory that's coming up. Take that as an opportunity to send them a text message or to reach out to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. This memory came up. I'd love to share it.
Yes. And that's another, right? Because we do get those, Facebook gives us those, this happened 8 years ago. And
Uh-huh.
yes. And again, that goes back to continuing to say their name, tell
Say
their
their,
stories, you know,
tell their story.
keep continuing to check in. It's a lifelong journey. So, oh my gosh. Well, what a gift, Dr. Clark. Thank you so much for being on the show today and for all that you do and for being such a heart-centered individual that helps these families on their journeys.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the platform. I think it's amazing that you're having this conversation. This is a conversation that will affect so many individuals. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Giving Grief Grace. If you found the content interesting and think it could help a friend or a loved one, please share it with them. Subscribe to this podcast and get a weekly dose of positivity. And while you're at it, please leave a review. If you enjoyed the show and want to support me financially on my grief journey, I'm raising funds for Project Purple, a nonprofit whose mission is to see a world without pancreatic cancer. I'm doing this by running the New York City Marathon in November 2025, and I'll leave a link to my fundraising page in the show notes. If you've lost a loved one and are looking for support in an online community, consider joining our free private Facebook group, Giving Grief Grace. May you be kind to yourself in the week ahead and give yourself grace. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.